So, just about to finish the topic of obsession. And as usual, at the end of the chapter, Kardec brings somewhat of a summary of the topic, but through questions to the superior spirits that assisted him in the preparation of these and other books. So now you have here Kardec putting some questions um, to the superior spirits, and it's interesting that what I like for us to observe here, of course, the questions, the answer is important, but the questions themselves would lead us, put us in awe with Kardec in order to put this book together, or all the books together. Not only have the questions that perhaps he thinks is important, but putting the questions that he thinks that we think is important, we the reader are important. So some of the questions here, it's obvious that he would perhaps know already, but as I read the question, say, wow, that's what I would be asking myself. And if I am asking myself, since I'm a very average person, most of us would be asking. And I think Kardec have that care to investigate what is it that we would like to know, and of course that is meaningful to the doctrine itself, not no vulgarities, no silly questions. So we start with the third question.
Okay. Start.
Please.
Okay. Is the obsession that prevents mediums from receiving the communications they desire always a sign of their unworthiness? I did not say that it is a sign of unworthiness, but that there can be obstacles to certain communications. They must endeavor to overcome such obstacles, which are to be found within themselves. If they do not, their prayers and supplications will do nothing. It is not enough for a sick person to tell the doctor, "Give me health. I want to get better." The doctor can do nothing if the sick person doesn't do what is required.
Okay, so suggestion number one, avoid the word always. So when Kardec always a sign of unworthiness, the answer by itself becomes no. Because there's always exception. And there you go with always. That is always accept to the rules, right? We can't always a very dangerous word for us to use. And suggestion number two that I have is no one is unworth. No attribute is unworth. If it's given to us or if you develop the ability, is worth it and should be properly used. The point that we have to make here is exactly that, to be properly used for good. As we just covered the first part, we can repeat that here. If the divine spirituality, the good spirits, the guardian angel, that medium, does not stop that obsession because they could, as we spoke last week, the higher spirits have an absolutely natural superiority of the less inferior spirits. They could just push aside any obsessors and say, "No, what I want you around, go away." They don't do it. And if they don't do it, since they are good and want for the best for that person, I mean, I'd like to believe that my guardian angel and you guardian angel, our spiritual guides, want what's best for us. And allow us to go through that process of obsession is because there are valuable, important lessons for us to take from that experience. And therefore, they will allow us to take the bitter medication. That very often these are challenges that force us to take action, to review our behaviors, to review our thoughts, and use that again on an opportunity you may or may not use as, as a tool to correct ourselves, to eliminate the devices that approximate those spirits towards us, to make relationships that are sour at the moment more malleable through our changes. In the process of change, again, we change the one that is next to us trying to hurt us. Once the problem is resolved, that medium that right now is not producing valuable work because the obsessor is preventing it, so to say. Once the problem is resolved, that medium may be a very productive medium. It may produce many valuable work of any kind of nature that they may contribute to his or her progress and to answer around that medium that will profit for the message they may receive through that medium. Okay, can go ahead. If anybody has a question, just go ahead and ask, okay? Otherwise, it's all right, you can just go ahead and read.
Okay. Number 4. Then, could the privation of communicating with certain spirits be a kind of punishment? In certain cases, it may be a bona fide punishment, just as the possibility of communicating with them is a reward that they should try to merit.
So the first question I would ask here is, if you accept there is a punishment, you have asked from whom? The punishment is imposed from someone to someone else, right? So who is punishing? Is God punishing? Is the spiritual guide or the guardian angel punishing? So the idea of punishment is one of those vices of language that we still carry, right? That you will substitute eventually. So it just warning with the word punishment. That again, I don't think should be changed. That's the original. It should be there. But also to modify our thoughts when we see that word, that's more consequences of our thoughts, of our behaviors, of our sentiments. So sometimes, perhaps all the time, it is a consequence. The more difficult or the harder is our behavior, the more far from the divine laws and for a long time that perpetuates it, the more difficult will be that the consequences of our actions. So I take off the punishment here and I take off the merit as well. We elevate our thoughts. We elevate the quality of our sentiments. We will have more elevated spirits around us, and the results of our mediumship will reflect those who are around us. We bury ourselves in darkness. We bury ourselves in the mud of ignorance. Our communications will reflect those who are around us. Again, it's just consequence.
Mm.
I have to make a parenthesis here. I'm sorry. We are primarily talking about here of psychographies when we're dealing with mediums. Okay, we are again not talking about mediums who work in the mediumship of rescue, assisting suffering spirits. This is a different thing. These questions over here, you should read more as psychographers, mediums who you write texts, we write messages, and when you read the messages, they will be of good quality and of bad quality. if we are doing work of rescue or assisting suffering spirits, very well prepared, very well corrected spirits, mediums will always associate with good vibrations, we will receive a very difficult, very ignorant, very rebellious spirit. That's the work they are doing. It does not reflect what the medium, where the medium is, morally speaking. Okay, that's a completely different thing. Okay, no
Okay,
questions, move on.
okay. Number 5, can we also combat the influence of evil spirits by guiding them morally? Yes, and that is exactly what you should do, because it is often a duty that has been given you, which you should charitably and devotedly fulfill. By means of your good counsels, you may lead them to repentance and hasten their advancement. How can we have more influence than the spirits themselves in this case? Perverse spirits more often draw close to humans, whom they seek to torment, rather than spirits, whom they try to avoid as much as possible. When they draw close to individuals who attempt to moralize them, they at first do not listen and even laugh at them. However, if such individuals know how to persist in the matter, these spirits end up being affected by them. High order spirits can only address them in the name of God, and this terrifies them. Humans obviously have no more power than high order spirits, but their language is more accessible to a less evolved nature. And seeing the influence they can exert over low order spirits, they better comprehend the solidarity between heaven and earth. Furthermore, the ascendancy that humans can have over spirits is in proportion to their superior moral development. They cannot dominate highly evolved spirits, or even those who, without being so evolved, are nevertheless good and benevolent. However, they can dominate spirits who are of low moral development.
So the first part of the question is the answer is kind of complete. It's hard to add anything. Can't we also combat the influence of evil spirits by guiding them morally? Not only can, but that's what we should be doing. Again, if I have harmed someone in the past, then now sees him or herself in the right of making justice to their own hands and is obsessing me. As I improve myself, I assist that spirit to improve him or herself because it's so attached to me, so connected to me that will some of it likely that spirit will get. So when it says by means of your good counsels, okay, but more than that, by means of your behavior, by means of what you're doing, by means of what that spirit that sees you as still that horrible person of previous incarnation of the past who was kicking the dogs right and left, and it still sees you as that horrible spirit, as they see that you're no longer that person, as you see that you don't no longer act as that bad person from previous incarnation, that person will see that it's possible, changes are possible, who will slowly and slightly like improve. And that is the true effective therapy. This is the true process of disobsession. As I mentioned often, the, the therapy, the treatment of a process of obsession, it's not gathered one, but has to be gathered at two. There is a soul relationship that is there for whatever reason, and both spirits are responsible. No one is guilty, but both are responsible. And both needs to improve to clear their responsibility with the divine laws. Now, the second part of the question, I think, is such a great question. How can we have more influence than the spirits themselves in this case? It is a question that very often comes to us in a different way. And basically, they ask about you guys, you high order spirits are right there with this bunch of perverse spirits. You guys are already so much more evolved than what we are over here. Can't you deal with them yourselves? Can't you resolve this yourselves? It's pretty obvious that is a great question, right? And the spirit tells over here, it's very hard for us to reach them because they are completely close to us. And they have much greater compatibility with us than with the more evolved spirits. The more evolved spirits have that perispirit so etherealized right now that the association of those spirits with us who are immersed in matter, it makes that associate much easier. They relate to us much more than they relate to the more evolved spirits. Besides that, for the process of obsession of that spirit in the spiritual world is again obsessed with us, focused 100% on us. They can't be focused on two things at the same time. So we are the best teachers to them at that moment. They are listening to us. They are watching us 24/7. It's 24/7. So the greatest teacher for an obsessed at this point is the one being obsessed. That's the one that spirit is paying attention so closely. Um,
Yeah.
Now is not an easy route, and Kardec puts over, or the spirit puts over here. Um, they at first do not listen and even laugh at them, than being us trying to assist them. However, if such individuals now to persist in the matter, these spirits end up being affected by them. Again, it's a slow progress that we will see results at a long time. Nothing happens immediately. Of course, that we humans, we don't have more power than the higher spirits. But again, but our language is more accessible to a less evolved nature, and seeing the influence they can exert over lower spirits, they better comprehend the solidarity between heaven and earth. Okay, when you see they over here, it's us, basically, right? We, the humans, you, the incarnate ones. And this makes me reflect on the importance of mediumship meetings, the value of being able to bring suffering, rebellious spirits to have some association with us, association with matter, because once they have that anemic shock, as you say, they are more likely to hear. Easier for us to do that work than for the higher spirits, for the greater degree of separation between the two parts. And for one thing, it gives us the opportunity to exercise charity here. And in the case of obsessions, it gives the opportunity, the one being obsessed, who carries responsibilities, and that's our relationship, to start to repair whatever was done in the past right then and there. But of course, we need to moralize ourselves first. We have to make sure that when we are serving our example, we're serving as a good example and have what is over here. Persist in the matter, be patient, and understand that it's always a long, slow process.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Renato.
yeah. We studied before that, sometimes when you make a little effort, you're already able to disconnect from, bad energy, so the benefactors can help you and so forth. I understand that, each case is different. Um, but you also mentioned last week that Divaldo in this reincarnation had to deal with um, an obsessor as well. So we all know, what Divaldo does. And at least from what we see his work now, I mean, we are so way away from what he's done. So the question would be, how much do we need to better ourselves in order to the obsessor let go of us? Because I'm seeing, cases where you just change a little bit your mindset and you're pretty much can, you know, have the help and don't have, all this hassle from other spirits. But on the other hand, you have a guy like Divaldo still dealing with this, and he's done so much that we can't even imagine. So that would be the question now. In at which point, um, even though the obsessor doesn't want to let go, because we already move on, things will happen naturally, something like that.
To the fact that we do our part here, that we stop kicking the dogs, we start um, elevating the quality of our sentiments or emotions, that now will generate, produce better thoughts, that will generate better words and better actions. We may be able to elevate our level of vibrations in which a spirit, obsessed, a persecuting spirit may not be able to reach us as constant, as persistent as you'd like to. But it doesn't mean that you are free from that process. Um, so let's say, I don't know what to say. In case of this passion crimes of abused husband and the woman gains the right of protection, and the judge established that the husband cannot approximate of the wife anymore. That is taking place. The guy doesn't come closer to her anymore, but the hate is still there. The desire to harm her is still there. It just can't, because there is a separation, in this case, a legal separation, and let's assume that the guy listens to to the law, right? In our case, when we do our part and we create that degree of separation, it doesn't mean that we are completely eliminated the process yet, because again, the process is eliminated when two learn the necessary lessons, when two shake, the two that shook hand in the past say, let us hate each other and punish itself back and forth for a long time. Now we're going to shake hands and say, let's unite in love, let's put all these things aside, and let's seek out our happiness. No, let's forgive one another, and we break that cycle, we break everything together here. That is the final of that process. Okay. So because of my limitations right now, if I elevate myself a little bit, if I do those things that I just mentioned, create that degree of separation, I may not feel the effects of that hate consistently or persistently. I may start doing a lot better for my merit for what I'm doing, of course. But that process is not resolved yet. It's not done yet. But that is what I can handle, Elmo. I cannot handle that persecution 24/7. It's too much for me. When I elevate myself to the level of a Givaldo, I'll be able to handle that better. And then I'll be able to deal with that situation, with that individual to whom I still carry responsibility to take him or her out of the darkness where they find themselves. Now, Divaldo had evolved himself to the level that he can handle that very difficult process, deal with it, and recover, basically recover that spirit that he called shadow. He was able to deal with that, right? Perhaps right now, when I did the best that I could, and I was able to create a degree of separation, I will be able to go through this incarnation in a better shape than I would do otherwise. But I still have that process with that spirit. Maybe perhaps even I, Elmo, still hated that spirit, still would have hurt that spirit if it's giving me the opportunity. But because I've done the right steps over here, I modified myself a little bit. I start to elevate the quality of my sentiments, emotions, thoughts, as I just mentioned. I was able to create that degree of separation, but I have not resolved the problem yet. When the opportunity arises, that I'll be able to be with that person again, to be strong enough to deal with that person again. When it's the right time, we will be together again. Because you're not going to say, if you use the example of Divaldo again, that from this incarnation that we know Divaldo, that he deserves to be molested by any spirit. If that opportunity was given to him because he was ready to deal with that, and was an opportunity for him to put an end to that persecution that was lasting, I believe, in a couple of centuries, if I'm not wrong. Perhaps even more, no, more than at least 3 centuries, right, Ron? The
I
shadow,
remember correctly, yes.
yeah, the shadow was at least some 3 centuries.
Yeah, it's from the 16, 1700s, I think.
Yeah, long time. So you see there, I mean, probably they have not been associated for quite some time. And when he was strong enough to deal with that and to assist that spirit, the opportunity was given to us. But for right now, all that I can handle is try to better myself a little bit to create a little degree of separation. Hopefully, eventually, I'll be able to deal with the full force of that spirit who truly hates me and be truly able to help that spirit and both of us shake hands in peace. At that time, to completely end the process.
Because I was trying to draw a parallel, because we studied also before that, for example, a mass murder. So not necessarily the person needs to address each one of its victims in order to learn the lesson and move on and evolve. And I was thinking that obsession was in the same way, but the way you explained, maybe I misunderstood. But when you explain, it has to happen with the person. It can't just, for example, Divaldo, I learned my part. If my obsessor doesn't want to learn, is there a problem? He needs to figure out with somebody else because I move on. Like, mass murders or, Hitler, this kind of guys. So obsession is a different beast. It has to happen the way you said. Shake hands. I need to address that spirit, and once we both let go, then we can, go to the next one.
Yeah, let's go back. Let's say, let's use a mass murder. Let's say the guy killed 20 people. All right. And out of those 20 people, 5 are highly evolved spirits. Upon returning to the spiritual, they say, poor guy, he deserves so much help. Instead of having hate towards the guy, this mass murder, those 5 of those 20 will assist that spirit. Very possible. Another 10 of them will be receiving the spiritual world by the guardian angels, by their loved ones, and then we will go through treatment. They will say, you know what? I'm not gonna pursue any revenge. I understand the divine laws. I know that no brewing hate in my heart, not gonna do any good for me. I'm gonna leave it alone. And another 5 will say, I know, I'll never rest until I'll make him suffer as much as I am suffering, as much as my loved ones had suffered because of his action. So I have to deal with 5 out of 20. Okay. The longer that those 5 stay in the mind of ignorance, because I place them there, I do have responsibility with them. If one of the 5 start to progress and move on, start changing the way they think, start the way they feel, they start getting out of this obsessive process, perhaps minor ones that I have to deal with. But I still have responsibility with those 4. Even if I completely change myself, even if I do on 180 degrees, I place them over there. It's my responsibility. I have to deal with it. If they take action they want to get out of it, good for them. They don't have to wait for me, better for them. But I'm still carrying responsibility to those who are there. But more important, I still carry the responsibility of eliminate from me what lead me to that behavior. And very often, it's through the suffering from those obsessions that are going to lead me to seek to eliminate those kind of thoughts or sentiments to lead me to commit those crimes. So in this process of the obsession there, both are having opportunities to reveal themselves and see why are they doing things the way they're doing, make necessary corrections. But for as long as I hurt someone and someone is suffering because of my actions, I carry responsibility regardless of how much I evolve. I still have responsibility towards that spirit. And if I truly repent, and this is the thing, if I truly repent, I will seek the opportunity to repair. I will seek the opportunity to be able to help. So I can just imagine in my mind here now, someone who evolved to the level of developed period of friend, you say, I need to get that guy next to me again. I need to help him now. Now I'll feel strong enough. I need to do this, otherwise I'll never be in peace with my own conscience. Because when you repent, you want to repair it.
So the connection is still there, but the relationship and how I deal with the relationship, because whoever decides to change, it goes from obsessor or obsessed, from a friend or a brother or a helper or something like that. So it's a change up on the relationship that goes from a bad thing to a good thing, when they decide, right?
That's the goal. That's the objective. Because eventually we're gonna be one family, right? Loving family, not family as we know here.
Yeah.
Number 6. If it develops further, can corporeal subjugation lead to insanity? Yes, a kind of insanity whose cause the world does not recognize, but which is in no way connected to ordinary insanity. Among those who are treated as insane, there are many who are really subjugated instead. They require moral treatment because they become truly insane when they are giving treatments intended for an organic cause. When doctors understand Spiritism sufficiently, they will know how to make the distinction and will heal a larger number of ill persons than they do with their present techniques. Mm.
I think this question is very important also, and that's another one that I imagine you ask, and we have heard those questions in different ways from many different people. So can a continuous bombardment of harmful energies that lead to subjugation actually leads to insanity? And the answer is yes.
Mm.
And this individual will be tormented so continuously, so often that it will end up causing some kind of arrhythmia, some kind of damage in that physical brain that will be classified as an insanity, as a pathology. So it's important that you have a distinction of the two types. You can say insanity can be produced by two primary causes. One, from the spirit, in the case of subjugation, and two, physical by brain defect. Um, Now, taking it a little bit further, we can say that the spiritual and the physical can be both cause and effect. Okay, this is a little bit more complicated. I'm going to try to explain. Let's assume that I have generated through consequences of my past actions. I've generated a physical body with a deficit in the brain that leads me to be considered insane, considered pathological. I, okay, and I have that pathology that is over there, and that pathology also allow me to have a better perception of the spiritual world. And it so happens that I have an obsessor that is trying to harm me. Because that pathology opens a little bit that window, it can increase the severity of that obsession. It can lead from, I don't know, perhaps a simple obsession into a subjugation because now I have that problem. So now what was could because be seen as a cause now is an effect. Okay. And the other way around, my insanity is due to subjugation. A spirit who is continuous bombarding me so much and making me, let's say, trying to free myself from that bombardment of negative energies. I get into alcoholism. I get into drug abuses, and that may lead to a defect in the brain secondary to my chemical dependence. So this also, what could be a cause become an effect as well. So in both cases, they both could be cause, they both could be effect. The, the continuous subjugation may lead me to harm my body, to harm my brain, and cause a physical defect. And the way around, the physical defect may open a window of opportunities to spirits to bombard me even more with the bad energies and increase the severity of subjugation.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
So I was thinking here. I was trying not to think that is a waste of a reincarnation, because we know that they know better. Never is a waste to have someone, reincarnate and go crazy, and sometimes, as we studied before, kill him herself because it's too much. But do you think that that's the that's the point that I want to try to get is because when you're reincarnate, the obsessors, there is a period of time. It can take your childhood or maybe 2 or 3 years or whatever, that they are not allowed or they cannot find you, or whatever it is the reason, that you have peace, that spirit have peace to develop or whatever. And then at certain age, it varies from person to person. Everything starts, and then we know what's happening. That's why we study. So why is that? First question: how does that work, and why is that um, allowed to have a period of time not to be disturbed, and why is that doesn't continue um, throughout the life, so the spirit can recover or do a better job without being so distressed with those obsessors?
When you say how that works, what that works? What is it?
How, I mean, because the obsessor, I mean, we study like obsession, fascination. This is really bad. So for example, when the child is on the womb, or when it's growing up, it's hard to see this kind of cases on children. Usually happens at a certain age. So there is this period of time that somebody's protecting. Say, I don't know if is this a happen, or the obsessors cannot find the spirit. I don't know how does that happen. That there's this window of peace for that spirit before everything starts to go downhill.
Okay. When we get ready for reincarnation, you identify ourselves as such and such from the previous incarnation, and once we attach to the zygote, to the formation of that new physical body, we undergo that period of reduction and forgetfulness slowly of our previous identity, so you can assume a completely new identity as in that next incarnation, right?
Yeah.
We have that period in which Kardec says that is perhaps the greatest, most important responsibility of the parents to introduce good moral values on that new being who's coming in, right?
Yep.
Now, this is what I think happens to allow the parents and to allow that spirit to have that fresh start as a blank canvas to start to paint a better picture of oneself with the assistance of the parents. They receive extra protection. They'll say, here now, everybody stay away. This is his or her time with their parents, with the grandma and grandpas, with the uncles and aunts who will now try to modify this spirit a little bit, to introduce this spirit moral values, to introduce the spirit, the necessity of forgiveness, and this and this and that and that. Okay, so I think it's a period in which, and again, that's what I think, divine providence gives, allows that spirit and the parents and the whole family associated with the kid to start to create the necessary modification that will or will not create a degree of separation from their tormentors. Because if this being who came in now does not have that extra protection, at least that 7 years or so there to receive new guidelines, it will not be able to do so. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. So there is a calm before the storm, and then these protections kind of fade away because according to depending on merit and whatever of that spirit, and then the bad guys kind of find them and then the children or the child, you know, it's up to grasp pretty much, right?
Well, that will depend of what that spirit have done in that period of temporary peace. It may have developed itself in a way that it's now harder to be found or rather to be reached, or it may dive right back into the same behavior and the same companions. But the opportunity is given, those that time necessary for the necessary modification of the quality of the sentiments and thoughts of that spirit is giving. And that is the great, the absolutely great responsibility of parents and of aunts and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, and everyone associated with that child to introduce that child to better kinds of vibration that will allow that spirit to perhaps have an easier a relationship with that obsessor. But again, parents will do the best if they do the best. You know, aunts and uncles, grandmas, grandpas will do the best. But if the spirit doesn't do it at their part, no, it's up to the spirit.
Yeah, I never would have thought that parents and family would play a role in help a spirit to deal with obsession. I was too focused on on a shake of hands and is every man for him or herself. And wow, it's interesting you mentioned that because I don't think a lot of people thought about that.
Yeah, but that's why we have those period of pretty much of a period of peace, or as you call, right? That is a great opportunity to start to modify the whatever led that spirit to be associated with those obsessors. You start to modify, start to prepare that spirit, even perhaps to deal with that obsessor in a better way. That now that individual being obsessed will act as a teacher. You had to act as a good positive influence for that spirit who is still angry.
And that influence it grows stronger uh, while the spirit is growing up, right? Because it's not the same influence on a child that is an adult, right?
I mean, of the parents.
No, I mean the obsessors. Because I mean, if the obsessor go full force on a child, they might jump from something and do something crazy. I'm imagining here that this influence it will be growing stronger with the children, the child growing up, right? It's not the same from the child to an adult, right?
I'm not understanding, I'm sorry.
Because sometimes we study here that some people, they're going insane, right? They go crazy because the influence is too much. They can't take it. They're killing themselves, right? So I would imagine that's the obsessors at full force on that spirit. But if that happens to a child, I mean, that would be like pretty, bad, right? Harsh, because if you're an adult, you might be able to deal better with, with this kind of situation. But if you're a child, you don't know what's happening. You don't even know what you are still.
Right.
Never mind spirits. So I would imagine that influence, that that obsessors, it will grow, with the child development, right?
Again, there will be that period when the child will receive that spirit will receive that extra protection during the period of infancy and childhood of the body in which that spirit is growing, is attached to. That in that period, the spirit is fully protected, and again, the normal case, the average case. Is there a specific case that it didn't work this way? Yes, I'm sure we can bring cases in that it seems like it didn't work as I'm saying. But in general, most of the cases, from the very beginning, there is that extra protection. As the spirits start to integrate more and more into matter and start to have more ability of make decisions, of doing things on their own, of having using more its free will, then it will intensify the association with the obsessor, or it will be the opposite direction. Depends on how this spirit will use its free will. If this spirit does not use the opportunity, those few years of peace, and learn valuable lessons and start to vibrate at a higher level, but continues to use the same kind of behavior that led him or her to have to be with those obsessors, then yes, they will be together again, and it will intensify, and may lead to disastrous decisions like a suicide. It may or may not. It may go the opposite direction as well. Maybe someone will use those period of peace in a valuable way, will learn how to keep him or herself vibrating a higher level, and will minimize the effects of that influence, and maybe, as I said, be a good influence for that obsessor. Are there cases of child who committed suicide and perhaps we could imagine that was secondary to an obsessor? Yeah. There is, we are talking about here the average, the most common, the normal process.
Thank you.
I think I'm not going to start the next chapter now that deals in identity of spirits, which is a very interesting that I like very much also. I think the topic of obsession is.
Still
We have the 7.
question 7.
Oh, I have one more.
Yes, yes,
Sorry, corrected my page. I'm sorry. Let's finish then.
number 7. What should we think of those who see some kind of danger in spiritism and who think that the best way to prevent it would be to prohibit spirit communications altogether? Even if they could prohibit certain persons from communicating with spirits, they could not prohibit the spontaneous communications given to these same persons because they can neither suppress spirits nor prevent them from exerting their secret influence. Such an attitude resembles that of of children who close their eyes and believe that no one can see them. It would be crazy to suppress something that offers great advantages just because imprudent people might abuse it. The way to prevent problems is rather to make this doctrine fully understood.
So some radical individuals, they all have a solution for obsession. That eliminate all possibility of interaction of the two planes of existence. That's resolve the problem of obsession. But that's when we see logic and reason are different. Because by logic, yes, if you cut the possibility of the interaction between two planes, there will be no more obsessors. There will be to try to derogate the law. You don't like the law, go talk to God. The law allows our interaction between the two planes of existence. And since God is perfect, created perfect laws, and since God is all love and everything from God concurs for the good, then there are possibility of the interaction between the two planes is good and leads to goodness. So the problem is to elevate ourselves, to educate ourselves, to understand this doctrine well. So we will profit of those associations with individuals out of the flesh, with their higher spirits, to learn from them. With those who are persecuted, who is trying to harm us, they have a reason. It's not gratuity. We have a responsibility. So you have the opportunity to repair, to clear our bad action of the past. Point is, we cannot just stop the wind. The wind will blow regardless. What we can do is to develop means to better use the wind to our own advantage. We can use the wind to generate electric power, but we cannot stop it. Same thing here. We can use this to our advantage. Interact with the higher spirits and learn from them. Interact with those who are harming us in order to repair, clean up our past, and move on the pathway of perfection. So now we finished. Now next week we'll deal with identity of spirits. Is a topic that I like very much also. I think obsession is a rough topic. It exposed to our reality as imperfect spirit and in need of a lot of work over here. I think some people may fear, but there is nothing to fear because with Jesus, there is no reason to fear anything. And we finish with our prayers that we elevate our hearts and minds, giving thanks to God, to our Master Jesus Christ, to our spiritual guides, our benefactors, YCG and Y. We are blessed, dear God, to have this doctrine at our hands, for you understand our great need to better ourselves morally. As we ask to be protected throughout the week, we ask to be inspired to use the lessons that we learn here in our daily lives to the best of our abilities. If it's granted to us the opportunity to repair the mistakes of the past, guide us to not waste this opportunity. Provide us with the necessary tools to assist those that you have in the past, to assist ourselves to stay firm in the pathway that leads to our happiness. We send vibrations of love and peace, protection, guidance to all of our brothers and sisters who are suffering the difficulties of the soul, the difficulties of the flesh. May you be consoled by our Master Jesus Christ. And we ask permission to close this meeting. So be it.